When you first start planning a trip to a new park, it's sometimes hard to know where to start. If you're visiting Acadia National Park and have just started your planning, then this episode is for you. Because I'm going to go over the park so that you understand what to expect when you go there. Acadia National Park is one of the easiest national parks to fall in love with, I think. It was the first national park that I ever went to, so it has a special place in my heart. But it's also one of the easiest to plan badly. Acadia looks really small on a map, but first-time visitors often underestimate how fragmented, how crowded, and how timing dependent it is. This guide will help you understand how the park actually works so that you can plan a trip that feels smooth instead of scattered. This is an overview of the layout of the park, of the highlights of the park, and some key things that you need to know about how to visit Acadia National Park. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written numerous guides and published several itineraries for Acadia National Park. At the end of the episode, you'll have a much better understanding of what the park is like, what to expect, and how to navigate it. From there, of course, you'll need to get deeper into planning all of the logistics, but this is a great place to start. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. And if you're listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. Stay to the end, because I'm going to tell you the things that I really wish that I had known before I went there that first time. But let's start with the basics.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the National Park expert. He is here to help you have the best National Parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting National Parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
So let's get your bearings. There are 3 distinct areas in Acadia National Park. The main area, where most people go, is on Mount Desert Island. This is where you'll find most, but not all, of the attractions in the park. Here is where you'll find Bar Harbor, which is the main gateway town, and there are other towns nearby as well. This is also where you'll find the Park Loop Road. This is the main scenic road, and there are several key attractions in the park along the Park Loop Road. The Park Loop Road is great for first-time visitors if you're looking for scenic overlooks, short walks, the iconic Acadia views, but it isn't great if you're looking to escape the crowds in the peak season, so be prepared for that. If you're looking for a classic Acadia trip, which most first-timers probably are, then start with the Park Loop Road. You'll want to also add in the Ocean Path, Jordan Pond, Cadillac Mountain, and Bar Harbor, and we'll talk all about those in a moment. Attractions along the Loop Road include Sand Beach. This is the only ocean beach in the park. Also Thunder Hole, which is a hole in the rock that at the right weather conditions or the right times of the tide, the water bursts up through the hole and creates this huge thunder sound, hence the name. There's Otter Cliff, which is a famous rock climbing site. If you don't want to rock climb yourself, it's fine, you don't have to, but it's fun to watch other people do it. And along the way, there is the Ocean Path, which is a really nice flat walking trail, mostly flat walking trail. There's also Jordan Pond that I'll talk about in just a moment. And there's also the access road to Cadillac Mountain. I'll also talk about that more in just a moment. Across from Somme Sound, on the other side, the west side of the island, is often called the quiet side of the island. Here is where you'll find attractions like Echo Lake. Also the town of Southwest Harbour and the famous Bass Harbour Headlight Station, which is perhaps the most, or certainly one of the most, photographed light stations or lighthouses in the country. It's very pretty, particularly famous at sunset, but pretty any time of the day. And sunset can be kind of a nightmare with a million other people, so I actually prefer it for sunrise, even though it's famous for the sunset. The other 2 areas that Acadia is spread out over are the Schoodic Peninsula and Isle of Haut. The Schoodic Peninsula is across Frenchman's Bay, and the nearest town there is Winter Harbour. Something that I wish that someone had really hammered home to me before I went for the first time was not to miss the Schoodic Peninsula. Most people just stay on Mount Desert Island, and that's what I did the first time I went there. Mount Desert Island is really beautiful. I mean, most of the highlights are there, but the Schoodic Peninsula is equally beautiful, and it's much quieter. There's a lot fewer people there. There's great hiking trails, really beautiful coastline. It's just heaven. A really nice way to get there, you can actually take a boat from Bar Harbor to Winter Harbor, which then connects to a free Island Explorer shuttle route that takes you around the peninsula. So you don't need to drive. You can, of course, but you don't have to. The Schoodic Peninsula is great if you're looking for quieter, coastal scenery and a slower pace. But it isn't the best option if you've only got a few hours, because if you've only got a short time there, you want to focus on the classic, the most iconic places in the park, and they are on Mount Desert Island. And then there's Isle Haut, which is a small island that's reached by boat from Stonington, which is more than an hour from Mount Desert Island. I didn't mention Mount Desert Island is, in fact, an island, hence the name. It's reached over a bridge. It's not a particularly long bridge, it's just a very narrow channel that separates the island from the mainland, so you won't barely even notice that you're on an island. Isle Haut is different. It's very much an island. You do need to get there by boat. Isle Haut is much more remote. It's small. There's not a whole lot there. There's a small primitive campground. So it's a really nice place if you want to spend some time there and really get away from all of the crowds and just kind of be in nature. It's very pretty, but most people don't go there. And if this is your first time in Acadia, you're probably not going to go there. But if you're a local or if you decide that you want to go there frequently, then at that point I would consider going to Isle Haut. Before we look in more detail at some more practical aspects of Acadia National Park, if you're watching this on my National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. So let's talk entrances. Acadia National Park doesn't have one single entrance, but there are instead multiple access points on Mount Desert Island. There are, in fact, many areas of the park that don't have an entrance station at all, and you don't even notice that you're going in and out of the park. Not all of Mount Desert Island is a national park. Many people live there. There's plenty of other areas other than Acadia on the island. So you don't go through an entrance station and pay an entrance fee for all parts of the park, but of course you should pay an entrance fee. It supports the national park, and there are some entrance stations. The main visitor center is the Hulls Cove Visitor Center. This is in Bar Harbor, and this is the main place to get information, purchase entrance passes if you're not going through an entrance station. It's typically open from mid-April to the end of October. The park itself is open all year round, but with some limitations. For example, the road up to the Cadillac Mountain summit isn't open all year. This is a separate road, and an important thing to be aware of is that there are vehicle reservations required to drive to the summit of Cadillac Mountain, typically from May through October. There are two different time slots. One is the sunrise time slot. Cadillac Mountain is actually the first place to see the sunrise in mainland United States for much of the year. Actually, not mostly when the reservation requirements are in place, but anyway, it's still an amazing place to see the sunrise. And then the other reservation period is for the rest of the day. Whether you go either or both, depending on when you get reservations for, it's totally worth it. You can hike to the summit also if you like to hike, or if you don't get or you prefer not to try to get a vehicle reservation. I will say too that Cadillac Mountain is iconic and the views are amazing, but the summit isn't the only place to get an incredible view. So if you don't manage to get a reservation, I wouldn't stress about it too much. The summits of any of the mountains that you hike to has spectacular views. If you're not a hiker, along Ocean Path also has really lovely views. Let's talk accommodations. There are no lodges, inns, or hotels inside the park itself. Most people stay in Bar Harbor. This is really convenient. It's just outside the main entrances to the park, but it isn't the only good base. If you want somewhere a little bit different, there are other options. One is Northeast Harbor. This is also quite close to the main Loop Drive section of the park. There's also Southwest Harbor and Bass Harbor, and they're on the quiet side of the island. If you have kids and you want to spend some time at Echo Lake, for example, this makes a really good base. If you're looking for a quieter experience, then Winter Harbor on the Schoodic Peninsula gets you away from the madding crowds. If you really want to stay inside the park itself, then you do have an option, but you need to camp. There are 4 main public campgrounds inside the park. On Mount Desert Island, there's 2. There's Blackwood and the Seawall campgrounds. On the Schoodic Peninsula is Schoodic Woods, and then on remote Isle Haut, there's the Duck Harbor, but this is very primitive, it's very small. There's only a few sites there, but if you want to escape the crowds and get away from it all, get off the beaten track, then that's the way to go. There are also plenty of private campgrounds scattered around Mount Desert Island, so there's lots of options if you have an RV, for example, and you don't want to be inside the park itself, but you want to be nearby. So let's talk driving. You can drive around the park except for Isle Haut, but it gets very, very busy in the summer. And if you don't get there early, most of the parking lots will fill very early in the morning. So if you do plan to park, make sure that you get an early start. The alternative is the Island Explorer Shuttle. This is a free shuttle service. It runs on multiple routes. There's about 11 routes in total, all around Mount Desert Island. It also connects to the mainland. There's also the route that I mentioned on the Schoodic Peninsula. It's in place from spring through fall. The spring schedule is a little bit more limited. Typically it begins in late May. And then the fall schedule typically runs from mid-August to mid-October, also a little bit more limited. And the full summer schedule is from late June through mid-August. It's completely free, and I highly recommend it if you don't want to get up super early to get a parking spot, or if you don't want to spend half your day stuck in a traffic jam. A really nice thing I like about the Island Explorer shuttle buses is that they do have bicycle racks on the front. So you can rent bicycles in Bar Harbor and then put your bike on the rack in the front, and then go to a paved place in the park or a carriage road and then cycle around. So it's very convenient. So, carriage roads, I just mentioned them. Let's talk highlights of the park. One of the highlights are the carriage roads. There are miles and miles of historic carriage roads in and around the park. These were created by Rockefeller back when this was his playground for a little bit. They are unpaved, and you can actually take a carriage ride on them, but you can also bicycle or you can hike around the carriage roads. They're a little hilly, they're not flat, so be prepared for that, but really beautiful. And there are several historic bridges along the way as well. This is where you can see Rockefeller's teeth, which is a nickname for rocks that have been placed along the side of the road, often at the bridges, and you can see they kind of look like teeth if you've got an imagination, I guess. One of the other highlights of the park is hiking, and Acadia is famous for its hikes, particularly for its iron rung hikes. These are named because many of the hikes are very steep. They go up to the summit of the different mountains in Acadia. And the National Park Service has actually embedded iron rungs in the side of the rock cliffs. And you climb up them like you climb up a ladder. There's also often along narrow ledges, maybe you do some rock scrambling. So they're not for the faint of heart or for people with a fear of heights, but they are super fun if you're not in that category. And they take you to the summit of mountains where there's amazing views over the island, the oceans, and the islands around them. Usually you hike up the Iron Rung Trail, but you don't hike down them. So they're not a two-way thing. They're one way for safety. So there's alternate rounds around the backs of the mountains that are less steep. So if you don't want to hike up the iron rungs, but you still want to get to the summit and the views, you can actually hike up and down the alternate back routes. And I've done that too when I haven't felt up for the challenge of the iron rungs or the thrill. So there's a way to get to the views without the iron rungs. But if you do want to do them and that's your thing, then they are kind of fun. One thing to be aware of is that several of the cliff trails are closed between the beginning of March and about mid-August because peregrine fountains nest there and they don't want to disturb them. These include the Jordan Cliffs Trail and the Precipice Trail. So you should always check with the National Park Service website or at the Visitor Center for current closures during your visit. The most famous hike in the park is the Beehive. And if you do one hike and you're up for a little bit of an adventure, I strongly recommend it if you're an adventurous hiker who's comfortable with heights. However, it is not the best hike if you've got really young kids. If you're a nervous hiker in wet conditions, absolutely don't do it. It's very dangerous. Or if you're afraid of exposed climbs. But if you're up for a challenge, it's amazing. The back route that goes to the same summit is the Bowl Trail, which is also nice if you want to get the view without the actual hike. If you are a hiker, other great hikes that I really like are Acadia Mountain, Gorham Mountain, and the Bubbles, depending on your ability. Also, the hike around Jordan Pond is really nice. It's much easier. If you're really adventurous and you really want a challenging hike and it's not the falcon nesting season, then you won't want to miss the Precipice Trail. I'm not great with heights, so this was not my thing. I haven't done it. It's described as a non-technical climb, so that should give you some sense of what to expect. Not my thing, but it might be yours. Now, Acadia is not just about inland and hikes and carriage roads. It's also very much about the water. It is surrounded by miles and miles of beautiful coastline and lots of water. I love going on sailing trips. I've been on a small sailing boat with just a few other people there. Champagne at sunset, really beautiful. Also on a really big sailing boat, a lot more people, kind of a fun vibe. There's beer and wine. They run them throughout the day, but I kind of like the sunset ones. It's a nice way to end the day after you've been hiking during the day, I think. I've also been on kayak trips, which I really like because it slows down the pace and you can go along the coastline, and there's many pebble beaches that you can only access from the water. So that's a really nice thing to do. You can also do stand-up paddleboarding. It's not my thing, I've never done it, but if that's your thing, you totally can. One thing that I do like to do is to take the ferry to the Cranberry Islands, which is not inside the national park, but it is just nearby. These are nearby islands, and it's a really nice day if you're looking for something a little less physical, a little less active. There are a couple of fishing villages there, so it's a classic New England experience. There's lobster shacks by the water, there's a small art gallery, and it's just a really pretty place to walk around and have a different kind of vibe for the day. There's also Jordan Pond. Jordan Pond is definitely one of the highlights of the park. You won't want to miss Jordan Pond. There's a trail that goes all around the pond. It's called a pond. It's kind of a big pond. It's more of a lake, I think. There's also hiking trails up to the nearby Bubbles, which are a couple of bubble-shaped hills on the other side of the pond. Another highlight is the Jordan Pond House. This is a restaurant that's right on the edge of the pond. There's a lawn between the restaurant and the pond, and they set up tables in the summer. And they serve popovers, which they're really famous for. They do serve other things, but the popovers, which are kind of eggy muffin-like things that you smother in butter and jam. And on a warm summer's day, there's a view of the pond and the bubbles and the sun shining, and it's just perfection, just wonderful. There are also a couple of beaches. I mentioned briefly Sand Beach already. This is the only ocean beach in the national park. It's beautiful, and it's cold. The ocean never really warms up. This is Maine. People do go in the ocean. I stuck my toe in, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. But kids splash around. Much warmer, not as beautiful maybe, but still nice in my opinion. If you want to go swimming, is Echo Beach. There's a man-made beach on Echo Lake there. The water is really nice in the summer, and it's just a lovely way to cool off after you've done a hike and are feeling the heat. Recommended. So you can see that there's tons and tons of things to do in Acadia. The problem is, how do you put them all together into an itinerary that actually makes sense? There's all of these things, and you have to decide which are the best ones to do in the time that you have available. There's crowds in the summer. There can be crowds on the roads. Parking can be a problem. Timing is really important. Acadia isn't necessarily hard to visit, but it's hard to visit efficiently, or at least it's easy to visit inefficiently. You don't want to miss out on anything, and for most first-time visitors, the biggest mistake is treating Acadia like one compact park instead of a collection of separate areas, because it is spread around. So how do you put it all together into an itinerary that actually makes sense? To answer this question is why I actually created several really detailed itineraries for Acadia National Park. There are 1, 2, 3, and 4 day options, and they're designed to take away all that planning angst. So, there's a link in the show notes below, but we can take a quick walkthrough now. They start with a park overview that gives an overview, kind of similar to this video, of what to expect in the park, but also some practical information. And then they get into a really detailed breakdown for each day of what to do. There's an hour-by-hour breakdown, and there's different alternatives in the same area of the park at the same time of the day. For people who have different interests or different energy levels or prefer different activity levels, so it's not a cookie-cutter thing, assuming that everyone likes to do the same thing or has the same ability, so that you can tailor it to your own interests. And then there's all the practical information. Each of these activities breaks down into all of the key information that you need. There's hiking descriptions and maps, there's driving directions and maps, there's tips, there's warnings, there's all the practical information that you need. They're designed to be a plug and play. There's already some flexibility and adaptability built in, but if you want to create an even more customized itinerary, what they do is give you all the information that you need in one place. So you don't need to pull information from different websites, from different blogs, from different guidebooks. It's all there in one place, and many people use them just as is, but many people do also use all of that information in them to create their own even more custom itinerary. Without these itineraries, I often find people super stressed, super overwhelmed, not too happy about all the planning that they need to do, because it really is a lot. Timing is really important. The timing to get between places, how long does it take? The time to be in the place at the right time, the time of how long to stay there and how to coordinate that. It can be a lot. So they're really designed to take away that overwhelm and make sure that you're in the right place at the right time and having the best trip that you can possibly have in the time that you have available. There's a link in the show notes below. Now, as promised, what did I wish that I had known before my first trip to Acadia? First of all, Acadia is more spread out than it looks, and especially in summer, traffic and parking can really shape your day. The best experience depends heavily on timing. If you want to drive, I really recommend getting a very early start. I think this is the best thing anyway. It's just so much nicer when there are fewer people around. But if you don't want to do that, then take the shuttle. The coast, the mountains, the ponds and lakes, the carriage roads, they all feel very different. And if you can manage it, I do recommend giving enough time to suit them all. I know not everyone has lots of time. Not everyone likes to get up super early in the morning, but a rushed visit, especially if you want to drive yourself and get a bit of a later start to the day, can feel like a parking scavenger hunt instead of a national park trip, which is not a whole lot of fun. And the Schoodic Peninsula, keep that in mind, it's really worth visiting if you want a quieter experience. I hope that this gives you a bit more of a sense of Acadia, and that you're starting to get a sense of what the park involves. I hope you have an amazing time there. I do have more videos, so check them out. If you want help planning your trip, you can also check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources there that you can use to plan and book your trip. And of course, keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best Acadia vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.